Greater Moncton has 171,000 people. We grew 5.3% last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the fastest growing metropolitan area in Canada. So I find like when you get investors from around the country, when they call you quickly learn that like this really sparks their interest. I think it's going to be discount season for the more higher cost properties in Greater Moncton.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's something it's going to really stand out in our market this year. We've seen new construction just above entry level, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, selling at 6, just sub 6 last year. Those are selling 525, 530 right now.
Well, it's also like if you want to go somewhere and have potentially a better quality of life, like that is a relatively inexpensive home to have a brand new 4-bedroom, 4-bath home for $550. I mean, you can live perhaps more affordably there than certainly a lot of other places in the country.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Perfect. All right. Change it to our guest segment of the show. Dennis, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah.
Neal, you want to intro our guest here?
Yeah, for sure. So this week we have Dennis Wilson from Keller Williams Capital Realty. So he came in, he drove in from Moncton this morning, or I guess this afternoon, to sit with us and chat about the Moncton market, tell us what's going on, what the word on the street is, if it's going up, going down, if it's like Halifax.
So Dennis, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. If you don't mind, I'll just quick little intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in real estate for 5 years. I also am a real estate investor. I co-own a renovation company as well.
Oh, right on.
And we just kind of doubled up and are growing very quickly.
Main 9 to 5 is selling houses.
Exactly. So selling real estate is definitely my main focus. And I also have a fiance, 10-year-old daughter.
Right on.
And born and raised in Moncton.
Cool.
How did you get into real estate? Like, what was, like, did you go to university first, or were you in a different career? I feel like a lot of people are in a different career and they switch over. You switched over. I came straight out of school, which I was kind of in a career at that point. But what was it for you the same, or?
I'm glad you asked me that. So I actually wanted to become a police officer. So I went to a private college, took policing corrections.
Yep. No shit.
And definitely wasn't for me. After I had my daughter, that softened me up big time.
Right.
So now I'm like a teddy bear soft. I'm, not a fighter. I'm a lover. And I think it just wasn't for me. I worked, worked as an armed guard for 9 years. And after doing that, during the time of it, I just had a bottom out, in life. I was like, this isn't for me. Come home working nights, don't know my family, and had a buddy of mine that was like, thinking this would be something for me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was thinking about getting into the mortgage industry.
Okay.
So he was like, Dennis, like, no, read these books.
This is real estate.
This is the thing to do.
Gotcha.
And I'm so thankful. And
what's the KW book?
Oh, well, actually, the guy, Keller Williams, wrote a book, $1 Million Real Estate Agent.
Yeah, was that in the stack of books to read?
No.
Oh, that's a great friggin' book, man. It is.
I kind of
Gary Keller, sorry.
Gary Keller,
yes. Keller Williams wasn't the person. It was Gary Keller and
Yeah.
somebody named Williams that's founded Keller Williams. But Gary Keller wrote that great book, Million Dollar Real Estate Agent or Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
Something
Not to be
millionaire
confused with the show.
Millionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and it was kind of weird. Like he was at another agency at the time, and like I'd interviewed a couple agencies, and the part that made it weird was like I was just after interviewing like his manager and other managers in the city, I sparked my interest, and I knew that I'm the type of person I was like I need a manager that focused heavily on motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So once I met with the one that I knew would be the rock star in that, I was like, sorry, buddy, but
you gotta go with
you got me into this, but
I won't name agencies, but
it's all about cultural fit for sure. It's funny. We really wanted to have someone on from New Brunswick, and we're excited. Like we connected with you as a fellow top producer to help serve our clients there, but also just to get some insight. Because if there's one province I get asked about the most,
it's New Brunswick.
It's New Brunswick. There's obviously everyone's curious about Toronto. Like, why are you jumping on PEI? That's an
I was going to make you jump on it. I was just asking you the question.
PEI is lovely, Neal. People ask me about New Brunswick, and maybe it's because it's nearby, but increasingly I find a lot of money is moving from here to New Brunswick. Investors here are kind of looking at it as a secondary market, and then I think a lot of people migrating east are looking at areas of Moncton as very viable because there is that like city vibe, and it's still really, really affordable. So glad to have the chance to talk about
my
New Brunswick.
Ontario buyers call me to ask about New Brunswick.
Yeah.
So now they're going to talk to Dennis because I can't answer the questions.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you've seen specifically over these last few years in New Brunswick and I guess most specifically Moncton.
Yeah, so I mean, probably something similar to Halifax, where like we didn't see a lot of multiple offer situations prior to COVID, and then March 2020 hits. Then we go to a phase where we think that the world is going to have a bad real estate market.
Yeah,
and out of nowhere, it just goes bonkers.
Does the opposite.
Nuts.
It went crazy. That was something that I was fortunate that I started in real estate in 2018. Really got my fingers wet. Really learned about the market.
That was a good year to get in.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, because even 2019 was a pretty darn good year too.
I got my license too.
That's huge. That's awesome. So that really helped me. It gave me enough confidence where I was like, I understand the market enough. I've written enough offers. I've dealt with enough clients that now that this is going on, I just need to learn how to deal with buyers and sellers in a multiple offer situation, and this will be good for me. So I would say even to today that my favorite part of being a realtor is representing a seller and on a hot property and looking at 14 offers and just going to them and be like, I'll play this game where I'll say, show me which one you think should be the one that we counter. And sometimes you'll be surprised. You get people that get it right, but when you go through the conditions, you see clause 11, you see some things, they're like, okay, now I see why we hired a realtor. And I think our brains are, half a big chunk of our value in
100%. It's an emotional time, and it's again usually the biggest investment people have. It's a lot of their net worth, their savings, their retirement fund, whatever it may be. So making that decision is difficult. I've told the story in here many times of me selling one of the flips I did, and I got so emotionally charged I couldn't make any proper decisions. And so now if I were to list a flip, I would be getting someone else to get Chandler to list it because I couldn't actually make a sound decision because I'm too man, you know how much time I spent working on that? You know how much that cost me? And they're like,
Neal, no one cares about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a such similar story, though. I bought a property downtown, right where I grew up. So much pride in the property, just super excited about, helping the downtown core.
Yep.
And listed the property at attractive price, had a bunch of offers. The first one that tried to bully, I knew to strike down. But once we got to offer date, I was looking at my team, and I'm like, guys, I'm a bag of nerves. And I remember it was our Christmas party. And I was like, guys, here, I don't even know what to do. It was weird. I mind blanked on everything, had no idea what I should do really. And it made me realize when it's your own property that you're dealing with, it's a next level.
It's different for
it's
sure.
hard to self-represent, but
I was just curious, so what kind of run up price wise, roughly did you guys see during the COVID period? What was the average home price before and what is it kind of now peak craziness? Yeah, we're still in it very much. Here, it's still gangbusters.
Strong.
Yeah. So according to stats that are being released, we're up over 84% over 3 years.
Holy!
So
basically doubled. There's a lot of homes that have doubled.
Yeah. And the thing, some things that I'm really proud about. So we in 2021 we had some new construction 2-story semis in Moncton North that were off market that I had the ability to sell 4 of them off market, and they paid anywhere from $228 to $242 for the units.
Yeah.
And then last year, a couple of them I helped them level up, and we sold those units in the mid 400s.
Wow.
Yeah, that's insane. We were just talking about this with our previous guys, the idea of the amount of equity growth that you can have in these properties and how important it is. The also thing that blows my mind though is those are brand new properties that you were selling originally for $240
off market.
That's crazy.
That's how much this market has changed. Is it went from there to now. I think the 400s makes a lot more sense when you look at the construction costs and what goes into putting up a property. So you saw that run up. That was on the residential side. Would you say it was the same on the rental market? I know for here we had a strong rental market pre-COVID.
Yep.
It was decent vacancy. You could keep them filled. My first couple rentals I struggled a little bit, but then pre-COVID it was starting to get pretty strong. Once COVID hit, again, same thing. We kind of weren't sure what was going to happen, but then it went gangbusters kind of. We had a little bit of a pause on immigration, but it still remained really strong. And then as immigration turned back on, it went psychotic, literally 0% vacancy. Is it the same in Moncton? And again, that's something that we get asked a lot about is investing in Moncton because I think your rentals on average are a little more affordable to buy. What was the rental market like? Rental rates also go crazy. What happened there?
Yeah, so cap rates would have been double digits when it first started.
Wow.
Jesus.
And
God, that
it was a
sounds good.
soft market. You're looking at like anywhere between, I'm going to take a crack at this, but 50 to 100 a door. And today, like you're looking at the average of a good unit, 200 a door,
Wow.
close to.
Yeah.
And that's even in the commercial multi side. Like
Yeah.
these buildings, sometimes I see them and I'm mind blown by the numbers, but they still cash flow well enough that they can get approved for financing.
So what's a rent, like what's a 1-bedroom rent for in Moncton? Like just an average.
$1,200-$1,300.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
that's what kind of grade is that? Is that like fully renovated, brand new, like decent shape, or like beat?
I would say it's like mid to good. Like
Mid to good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then like
Yeah.
the brand new fancy might be 1,500 or 14 range.
Yeah.
And then like lower end might be 800 to 1,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And-
And
and-
lower. Yeah.
Yeah, has that seen a pretty significant increase over the last 4 years too?
It has. Like I have some units myself, and I feel that even the prices I charge, I felt like they were somewhat high in the beginning when I purchased them, and now like I'm a good rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just mind blowing that even through last year, they've continued to slightly rise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to mention as well is when it comes to new construction, I was having a conversation with a couple of realtors at my office this week. There was like affordable new houses for first-time home buyers is in such high demand in Greater Moncton.
Yeah.
We had some units that were in Dieppe that were started at $305,000. I had a client purchase one at $320,000, and then the following week, the builder had moved it up to $350,000, easily sold.
So those are new construction units people are able to buy for $300 and $350. That's still fairly reasonable. Would that be current today, or that's even higher now?
And now they're at $350,000.
But now they're
and,
$350.
And
Man,
now
that's
that
still so cheap compared to here. It's crazy.
And now that phase is complete, like those were 2-story townhouses, 1,400 square feet above grade. Those units now in the next phase, are going to be what,
400.
360?
It's still like, yeah.
I don't want to go down another story, but this is just
All
like
right, let's hear it.
there was a
for a
brand new
while.
neighborhood being built in Halifax. A lot of people will know it. It's called Governor's Brook. You might
Oh
be
my
familiar
gosh,
with it in
yeah.
the Spryfield area. It's on the Halifax side, and it was one of the, I'd say, only affordable brand new neighborhoods at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't mean affordable by any means, other than the fact that it's not like massive homes in a.
Yeah, they intentionally built them smaller. They did more townhouses, more semi-detached units.
Yeah.
They also came up with the ingenious idea that you had no options. You want to change the countertops? Too bad. These are the countertops that come with it.
We have some of
like
that.
Same with
flooring, too
exteriors.
bad. This is what it is. Same exterior, same. And they do that because it does keep the cost down.
It keeps the cost down, and it also allows them to produce them a lot quicker.
Yeah.
At
Anyways,
first, no one was buying them.
At first, no one was buying them, and I remember one of the builders approached me through an agent in office and offered 8 of the townhomes at like $240, maybe $225 or something. And
When
I
was
like,
this?
3 years ago,
More than, it would've been
No,
more
4
than
years
3.
ago now.
Yeah, 4 years anyway.
4 years ago, it can't be any longer than that because I was in licensed and like
Yeah.
Governor's Brook was open.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I was like, "There's no way I can ever see these being worth more than that." And then I feel like in the last year, there's been some for $650.
Over the semis?
Yeah.
Yeah, the semis might.
550 for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
550 to
for the semis.
600, I think, depending if someone's been to work to them. And they sell like this. Like they go up and it's just like,
Oh
Yeah.
man, they were doing like their high end detached homes. You could still get a high end detached home there. It was like $439, then $469. Actually, so we're just recording before here. Remember that person I said was crazy?
yes.
She messaged me. So the reason I broke up with her as a client was
I was like, this is an ex-girlfriend he's about to bring
I
into
pulled
this.
so many strings to get this woman. Like this was in Governor's Brook.
Yeah.
A deal had fallen like the week before closing, right? So the house was ready, and they had steadily been increasing in price. And I think at this point in time, like she could have still had that home for I want to say like $419, a semi-detached, 3-story garage, like, and ultimately her lender, her mortgage professional was like, I don't think you can afford it. And I'm like, for the love of God, please buy this, because if you get 6 months into it and you feel like you can't afford it,
We get 500
we could
grand.
sell it for $500,000
For profit.
And she backed out of the deal. And there's a bunch of other things. She was just a little bit on another planet. Literally, they sold the same unit to someone else for $469. So I think she like lost $40,000 in
Day
2
one.
weeks. And now those, like you said, those would be up.
They gotta be
And
569.
this-
They're 569 all day.
that
The new
was-
ones are 579.9.
That was only 24 months ago, right? And so she lost $140,000 of potential equity tax-free in 24 months because her mortgage broker, shout out to this mortgage broker, told her like, I don't think you should do this. I think
We're
this
walking a
would stretch
fine
you
line
little
here,
bit-
Chandler.
little bit
You're
too-
walking
too
a fine
thin."
line.
But at the end of the day, like I think Chandler's right. Like, and I get triggered by that. Mortgage specialists giving market advice.
Yep.
Stick to what you're good at.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
get the best mortgage, and we'll get you the best deal.
I won't.
Yeah.
I won't sit there and tell you like variable, fixed, all that. I have my opinion on what I do. I might make a small suggestion based on what your mortgage specialist is kind of pitching, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I'm by all means not a.
100%. You need.
But
you
she
need
just
to
hit me up to be like, "Will you be my agent again?" And I'm like,
All right. We've digressed. We need to get back to the Moncton market. So you said multi-units basically effectively doubled. So did homes.
Yeah.
Were rents the same on the multi-unit side, or like I think we were kind of alluding to it before we came in here, and I saw some stuff on the news, and this is kind of again, multi-units are based on their NOI, their net operating income, which is your revenue minus your expenses, and so on top of revenue growth, I think there was some expense drops, and I think that's what really helped go from that, like you said, 50 to 100 a door to up to 200 a door, because that might even be more than double sometimes, and so kind of what was that? And what's going on there on the multi-unit side that's making things better for people to invest and buy?
Yeah, so I think like one thing is when nationally you see articles like what Money Sense had released a few weeks ago, and it shows that there's still some room for growth in Greater Moncton.
Yeah,
that causes hype, and then at the end of the day, the numbers still kind of make sense. The average cap rate would be like 4 to 7%.
Yeah,
4 is not great.
yeah, like I don't know, like were they doing some stuff
property taxes.
tax-wise?
Because I remember I went there to invest once, and the thing that shut me down, I went to get an appraisal done, and they were just like, "This is what it is," and I'm like, "What the hell?" And like, "Well, look at the property tax bill," and I was like, "What?" And that was years ago, and
They
that
were
kind
high,
of
or they were
insanely
high.
high,
Yeah.
insanely high, and it nuked the value because it had great income. But I was like, "Well, this is the same income I get in Halifax. I understand your cap's a little higher. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Would I not get this per door?" And now we hadn't done a full appraisal yet. We were just chatting. And he's like, "It's the property tax, man. It's the property tax." So what's going on with the property tax in New Brunswick, I guess Moncton, wherever? Is it the whole province that's changing?
Yeah, so without getting into numbers, the non-owner occupied taxation, which is not quite double, we'll say on average, without getting into exact details, that number is being cut in half in a 3-year phase.
Okay.
So that'll be forced appreciation for investors overnight. And that's something that I always try to educate my clients on, just to show them that even though your cap rate might not be perfect right now, if you can get into a unit that you can close your eyes on for long term, you're going to be having much more cash flow after these.
Yeah, just so I understand that. So right now, if it's a non-owner occupied rental, you're paying a way higher property tax. Like
That's correct.
approximately
Even on a
double.
duplex?
Even on a duplex.
Yeah, approximately double.
Yeah.
But they're going to phase that out to bring it back
Jesus.
more in line with others.
They're
that is going to raise the value of those properties kind of
Immediately,
overnight.
because that property tax is one of the biggest bills you end up paying.
Yeah.
And I bet you it is the biggest bill you pay on average in New Brunswick. That's huge. Is there a rent control?
There is to an extent. Last year they had a cap rate.
Okay.
And this year they didn't renew the cap rate, but they've mentioned that if someone raises a rent, the tenant can challenge it so that it is met at market rent.
I saw that, man.
That's
I thought
actually
that
a good
was
idea.
awesome.
That's a really clever idea. I like that a lot.
But this is the thing. I'll hear they go, "Oh, but there'll be such a backlog," and there would be, right? Like, so I don't know how they're going to handle that backlog, but I like it because it's essentially, I don't want to say, it allows some room for reasonable adults to be like, "Hey, this is what I'm proposing," and you know what? I think the perfect scenario would be that if you want to take it to a hearing, both sides have to agree with the result of the hearing. So you can go to the tenant and be like, "Listen, I'm raising it this, but that's lower than market. And if you want to fight me on it, we can go to the tenancy board, but the tenancy board says, actually, the market rate is this, you have to pay that." And vice versa. If I go too high and they say it should, it's like arbitration in sports.
Yeah.
You know, baseball arbitration. Like, man, you go in there like, "I think I'm worth
yeah.
this." They say you're not, like, and the arbitrator says
I
it,
like
and that's
it.
what you get.
I do. I'm into that. Interesting.
Yeah, I remember reading that and being like, that is going to be a lot of bureaucracy. Like, it must be getting a backlog in the tenancy board, but it made a lot of sense. Like,
Have you dealt with it firsthand?
I haven't dealt with it firsthand on a challenge. I've heard of. I've had.
Do you have given out rental increases without challenge?
I actually haven't had to give out rent increases. So I just got into the market last year with making purchasing investment properties. So like my rents are still where they're at. They're just a bit below market.
Yeah.
Because even in the last 12 months, it's still taken a bit of a hike.
Yeah, but in theory, like right now, you don't have a hard cap. So like
No.
you could go out there and say, "Hey, I want to increase it $100." They would just then have the right and say, "I think that's too much," and then you'd go down this this procedure. Man, I kind of love the sound of that.
I'd want to assume that you would have to take some comps, show them to the province. And
Yeah.
I don't think that they know exactly all the time in each market what a market rent would be.
It's hard to tell.
Because, I mean, it's...
And you probably have to bring in some data about, like, hey, this is what my expenses did, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah. So it's...
be fairly nuanced. I don't think it's going to be a carte blanche thing, but I think it's a better option than doing the blanket method that they did here in Halifax. It's 5% across the board. It was 2% during COVID.
It's not 5% until January 1st.
Sorry, it's not 5% until January 1st, but for now it's 2%, and then on January 1st it'll be turning to 5%, which is 5% is more reasonable. 2% made no sense at all. I'm sure you've experienced it, but insurance went up a fortune. Property tax for everybody but the people in New Brunswick went up a fortune, and like every other utility also went up. So it did not make any sense. But
this is a digression. I was trying to think of like ways to figure out this rent cap situation. I had this idea that you could raise rent
proportionate to what your expenses went up.
No, well that would be the obvious thing, but then you're gonna have to be proving it and probably
talk about paperwork and bureaucracy. That'd be insanity.
I'm just sort of thinking like if you say you have a long-term tenant that's been there for 6 years or for 10 years, you could figure something out where based on what the rent started at 10 years ago, you could apply some sort of amount that all right, you can bring them up to the point that whatever the rent cap is today, retroactively for all those years. So if they've been there for 10 years and because you were a nice person, you never raised the rent for 10 years, well, now the rent cap is 5%. You can raise them 5% for every one of those 10 years. You can raise them 50%. And that would take someone that was $600 and bring them to $900, which is still incredibly below market. It's also, while it's a 50% increase on the books, it's actually not that much. But then you have someone who's maybe been there for 3 years, and you know what? They're at $900. You'd actually be able to raise them 9% or 15%. So they would go up a little bit, but not an absurd amount.
Right? Like TFSA. You get your limit, and it's set every year. And if you don't use it, it's put aside.
Exactly.
Because it is intense sometimes to try and keep up with it all. And
Did I just fix the rent cap situation?
You may have.
That should be allowed. If it's so far below market rent, you should have more than just 5% or whatever the cap
But I
rate.
also think it just like also protects the people who are going to see a big jump from a very low rent. It also protects the people who are already at a high rent and have only been there for 2 years. It protects them a little bit from being gouged. Like, man, I've only been here 2 years. Right? Like, so their increase would be relatively small. The most you could increase them would be, if they've had no increases, right? In those 3 years, well, now they could get hit with 15%. Yeah, that's not ideal, but man, what hasn't gone up by 25% in the last 3 years? I just think that's a good bridge. But anyway,
we've digressed again.
So who are the buyers right now in Moncton?
That's what
like, are they Monktonians who are probably like, holy shit, I can't believe where these prices are, but whatever, I'm in it, I'm living here. Or is it come from a ways? Is it people from the rest of the province? Or is it bordering Atlantic Canadian provinces? Like, what's the demographic that's coming in here and spending kind of these unprecedented dollars?
I feel like we still have a good amount of local Greater Moncton people. Also people from other parts of New Brunswick. We have a lot of people from the Acadian coast that will move down to Moncton for opportunity, Dieppe for opportunity. I do think aside from that, we get a lot of people from Ontario, British Columbia, people that will sell their house, take the equity out of it, and then they move to Greater Moncton. They're able to buy a house cash and then keep a little bit in the bank.
Right.
Not my way to do it, but I would take that. I'd still take a mortgage and then invest the difference. But everyone to each their own, and it gives them peace of mind. They go to bed at night. They're older. They're like, hey. I just want to own a house outright and have some cash in the bank.
There's something to be said about that.
That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice to me.
Eliminate some of those payments wouldn't hurt. Okay, so you're going to have a mixed bag. I know it went up again tremendously, COVID. I feel like in Toronto, everyone was like, screw this. This was terrible. And then they wanted to come Atlantic Canada way. I've been kind of crying about this, but I feel like I'm seeing a bit of a shift back where people are having to go back either because their job is no longer work from home, or they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I did like Toronto. I just like to say I didn't like Toronto, but I kind of miss the city. Are you seeing that now where you had clients you maybe sold into a home during COVID that were like so fired up to like, screw Ontario, I'm ready for the East Coast, and now like, I'm going back?
Yeah, it definitely is happening. I've had a few clients that's what they've done. They moved down here and they were like, this is not exactly what I pictured this to be. This is not where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Dennis, I need you to sell what you sold me and get me back home.
What's kind of like here we have one market and it's kind of strange, right? Like we have the Halifax market and it kind of floats everything else. Even our periphery markets that are starting to do well, Toronto's been doing well, Bridgewater, Kentville, Wolf, like those are strong micro markets.
It's not enough
But
volume,
Halifax stirs the drink. In New Brunswick, you've got Moncton Dieppe area, you've got Fredericton, you've got St. John. Like how do the areas compare price wise? Like, do you notice a big difference in pricing one area to the next? Like here, we're joking that you drive 30 minutes in any direction and your prices fall off pretty significantly. What's it like in New Brunswick?
We don't see it as much. I was looking at statistics. Numbers for rural areas have dropped a bit more than in the city. We're down about 11% for average price from last year in the city, and a bit more in the rural areas, but not too much. I find it just takes a little bit longer. So a lot of my clients, I'll educate them on, if it's a price where we know it's not going to be a multiple offer situation, we're going to wait it out, and we're probably going to get the dollar that I'm recommending.
Yeah.
And it usually works out fine. It just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
For that right person.
Well,
to come around.
what might they be relative to one another? Like say a home in Moncton, but if you take that same home, you pick it up and you drive it 30 minutes outside of town, like what would the relative prices be?
It would 30 minutes would drop maybe 10% or so.
Really, that close? Oh, interesting.
It's not as dramatic. I think the people are more spread throughout.
I think
New
there's also a
Brunswick.
limitation when your high-end price is relatively low. It kind of in a weird way pulls your low-end price up a little bit, right?
It would be a little bit more than that, but like it's still it's not too bad. Like we have areas like Bucktush, Rishabukto, Rexton. These are like 30, 45-minute drives. They're down a bit more than 10% compared to Greater Moncton, but as Moncton heats up, I find these areas have seen tremendous growth as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of that's just probably a correction. Is like we had this thing where it's like, whoop, and everyone's like, oh, prices are falling. It's like, yeah, we're doing this little dip recovery, and now we're just back to here again.
Yeah.
A similar model there.
So we're in I'm glad you call it the dip recovery. So I'll use that. This month was our first drop since December. We're 336 last month. We're 324 this month.
Okay.
And I think this is just, the rate effect is here.
Yeah,
and it's here to stay. But now I think we will take we'll start taking off again, just based alone on the amount of inventory we have.
Did you have a dip in December, you said?
We had a constant dip to December.
Oh, wow, okay.
From summerish.
Okay,
I wouldn't,
so from like late summer.
Same
all the way
high
through
we
to
had
December.
here probably is like, end of Q1, start of Q2 last year, psycho.
Yeah.
And then it's just like petering down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ours dragged a little longer. Like January, February here was.
You did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
January, February was a little more aggressive, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
So now you're finding it's getting back to that market where you have multiple offers, people are stirring, you're getting buyers coming out of the woodwork that want to get in.
Yeah, that's what I find. And I think that another big reason why we're seeing a dip in the average price this month is I've noticed one trend that really stands out to me is that over 700K is down like 60% from last year, units sold.
Right.
Yeah.
So I looked at April to November, and that was 13 units in Greater Moncton sold.
Yeah.
6 months trailing previous to that were 36. Mm-hmm. So we're
I feel
really
like we'd
down.
have a similar thing in the 800 to 1.2 range.
Yours would be higher, right? Halifax.
Yeah. Our super high end is still doing fairly well, and then everything that's
a separate marketplace. They don't even take mortgages.
Here affordable would be affordable on the Halifax side is under 6, and then affordable maybe outside of the Halifax area would be 450 and under. Is still gangbusters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything in there is going nuts. I think where we saw a lot of the slowdown, I think it's the same for you guys, is where you have two strong income earners. They qualify between 800 to 1.2. And so when you have an interest rate change and with that amount of money, like 1% shaves off $250,000. Right. And so I think a lot of those people, their approval changed dramatically there over the last 6 months. Again, and now I think what we're seeing is those long-term 5-year rates are coming down into the mid-4s, low 4s, and they're being able to qualify again to get back into that. So interesting. So as a whole, you said the market looks like it's feeling pretty strong, pretty good. I will say I feel like we have a lot of listings coming on right now, and we have a lot of multi-units coming on. People just who don't want to deal with the expenses. Is it the same there where there's a lot of listing volume coming on now, or do you find it's pretty much quiet, like it's still that really aggressive low inventory market?
Inventory is growing, but it's not growing as fast as I thought it would for the spring market.
Okay.
And that's a little bit concerning, I think, for our market. At the end of the day, I think what's going to end up happening is if it doesn't grow, people are just going to, again, be forced hand to pay numbers that they may not want to.
Yeah, push the prices
competition's good. Up to 400, it's pretty hot. And For example, a couple of weeks ago, I listed a split level semi. These prices, you guys will be way different in Halifax.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
224.9 split level semi, Moncton North.
Damn.
5 days in, we have 14 offers sold for 255 cash, no conditions.
Sweet.
So I mean,
That's really good.
That price, you know,
13% over ask, no conditions.
Yeah. I mean, the ask price is still like boggles my mind a little bit. Here, like our market is driven by the fact that, you know, we've got major hospitals, major kind of commercial. We obviously have the port here, which is shipping, but it's also Navy, all the universities. All of these things are kind of why when people ask like, well, you know, how's Halifax doing? We have all this stuff that makes us pretty recession proof because hospitals, universities, the Navy, government, they don't go anywhere even when the economy gets bad. What are sort of the underlying drivers in Moncton and New Brunswick as a whole?
I find that one of them that helps a lot is the immigration game strong in the East Coast. We're feeling it as well. I feel like there's a lot of people moving to Greater Moncton. I'm hearing from some of my clients that it's easily accessible to get a PR.
Yeah.
And I don't know the details to that. And then also logistically speaking, Moncton's in a great location. We're an hour and a half to St. John, an hour 45 to Fredericton, an hour to Prince Edward Island, 2.5 hours to Halifax.
Yeah.
We're located in an area where big companies see that and they know that they can move product to areas all throughout East Coast, Quebec, very easily. Walmart distribution just set up in our industrial park. That was huge for us.
That was a huge win, yeah.
TD Corporate opened their center in Dieppe. That was really big for us. And a couple other large companies and our industrial parks are seeing tremendous growth.
Yeah. And I mean, it's classic, you follow the money, right? Like these big corporations who literally would spend millions of dollars a year researching on where they should post up at. It's like, well, they're doing all the research for you. If they're sending money there, it's because, you know, they see population growth, they see all these things, and you can just tail ride their research effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Do you guys have an Amazon warehouse?
No.
Not yet.
I heard speculation and rumor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like they will look at what Walmart did and think like they're on to something. Because I gotta think if a company like Walmart, the amount of research they would have done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's I gotta think that they're thinking about it. But have you guys heard anything in Halifax or?
We have one here.
Okay, you have.
We do have one in Dartmouth in the Burnside Park.
Okay.
And they were supposed to be building a even bigger one. That got kind of canceled when rates started to go, and I think there was concerns about consumer spending.
Got it.
But I remember seeing an article or something that they were looking at one for Moncton because basically what you said, it would feed all of New Brunswick as well as probably PEI.
Yeah.
And so when you put all that together, then it kind of makes sense, I think, for them. But again, Amazon is such a massive scale that they need. I'm kind of surprised they even came here, to be honest. And I think they might have pushed it themselves. Like that's why they backed out of their bigger deal. Mm-hmm. Is there any other major infrastructure projects that are coming down the pipe that you think will dramatically change the Moncton market that people should be like, all right, this is a really good reason for me to get in, like a plant or a new, like another job center, I guess?
There's not much on the job side. I think the thing that really stands out to me is the amount of multi-units and commercial real estate being built. Yeah. So our permits last year crushed records, and even this year, our permit value in Greater Moncton would be higher year over year than our real estate.
Right.
Wow.
So it's there's
it's outpacing the
There's some big players that have come in. They've purchased large parcels of land. They've also purchased older properties in the downtown core, and you know, like Ashford Group has bought a lot of property. When you see stuff like that happening, I got to think that these guys are smart. Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't
see something coming,
dumb money doesn't get that big.
100%.
So it makes me think that there's still room for growth. And then when I look at Halifax being 2.5 hours away and the numbers you guys have, I understand it's a completely different economy in many ways, but we're way below still. So when I look at that, I'm like, our economies, at one time, Ontario was, Toronto was a little small town, Barrie didn't have high sales.
Yeah.
It was, so I think we go through these phases and the hyper growth, I think there's still room left in Greater Moncton.
A big part of me believes that Moncton has a stronger commercial sector than Halifax relative to the number of people that they have.
Why is that?
I think that the province as a whole of New Brunswick is more business oriented, more pro-business, and provide more incentives and work more with their businesses to help them grow than Nova Scotia does.
Bold statement. Okay.
It is a bold statement. And I'm going to try and find some stats for that
Sure, yeah.
for next time you're here to talk about it.
A couple stats I could share. So, like, Greater Moncton has 171,000 people. We grew 5.3% last year. That was the fastest growing metropolitan area in Canada. So I find, like, when you get investors from around the country, when they call you quickly learn that, like, this really sparks their interest. And that's one of the main reasons they're giving me a phone call.
Yeah.
When I start talking about taxes, that's when they get a little, what do you mean? Like 4, 5, 6% cap rate and like $10,000 tax bill on a 4 unit. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Everywhere has its obstacles, that's for sure. Is there a specific tax to non-resident people? Like here in Nova Scotia, we've got this thing now where if you buy a property here as like a second property, you're not going to live in it. They're just going to charge you 5% in addition to your title transfer fee.
There's one on new construction.
Okay.
But I don't think on just
any other type of property.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actively trying to dissuade people from
Moving
coming here, which is rich, but
because your government tried to implement one last year.
Oh yeah, and they pulled that back really
well,
quick.
that was going to be on like just ongoing property tax.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of secondary markets that are their whole local economies are based on the fact that people come from other parts of the world and stay at their summer home, and for 6 months of the year they dump money into the local economy and they don't draw from any resources. Right? Like they don't go to the hospital, they don't go to the schools, they don't go to the public libraries, they don't ride the bus, they don't do anything. They just come and go to restaurants and go to events and spend and spend and spend. And so when the government was going to put this extra surcharge on their property tax, it was actually all the smaller municipalities rallied together and said, please don't do this. We want these people here. I remember there was a story that was kind of big. It was in, where was it? I want to say Liverpool, where this family that, only spent their summers there, but had done so for years and years and years, left some crazy, like millions of dollars in their estate to the local hospital because of what the community meant to them. And that's people like, you're trying to alienate those people. You're trying to tell them not to come here for the summer. Like, so it makes sense. They walked that back, but the de-transfer tax on out of province people who are buying something and not going to move here, it's still there, and it's 5%, and it's hefty, right? That's a significant amount on the price. So, yeah. So where do you forecast for the rest of this year? Like, what's happening right now, and what could people who are thinking of maybe going to New Brunswick and Moncton this year, like what's coming down the pipe?
I think that this year we'll see close numbers for units compared to the past few years. I think we'll probably be the fourth highest year. I think 20 to 22 will still be above. Volume, I think, will take a good hit. And the reason being is, like I'd mentioned, the high price stuff in Greater Moncton really has taken a hit.
Yeah.
New Brunswick is only so rich. There's only so much that people can afford. And I think buyers, because of inflation and interest rates, have been forced to be more budget conscious and look at making maybe a purchase of a little bit less than what they would have initially.
Gotcha.
100%. Similar to what we're facing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important for someone to know that, like, the price at least seem to be finding some sort of base, right? Yeah. Because there's some areas where they went up and there's no real obvious floor for them necessarily. Like, whatever correction, like, how far is that correction going to be? But population growth is the main driver, right? As long as you've got those population growth numbers trending even close, so you don't have to grow 5% every year, but if you can keep that like close to that amount, that's going to support the housing.
Yeah, that's huge. That's going to drive it crazy. But okay, we're going to wrap it up here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to start bringing Dennis out, hopefully, more frequently to give us an update. Potentially we'll Zoom, so you don't always have to drive. I'm even complaining about driving, and I live 30 minutes away. So yeah, but thank you for the update. Is there anything you wanted to add before we shut her down?
Yeah, no, I think the one thing I was going to add is just that I think it's going to be discount season for the more higher cost properties in Greater Moncton.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's going to be really stand out in our market this year.
Gotcha.
And I think that's really important for people to see. We've seen new construction, like just above entry level, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, selling at 6, just sub 6 last year. And those are selling $525, $530 right now.
Okay.
I think stuff like that is important for people to see.
There's huge opportunities available for people in that marketplace.
Well, it's also like if you want to go somewhere and have potentially a better quality of life, like that is a relatively inexpensive home to have a brand new 4-bedroom, 4-bath home for $550.
Yeah.
Obviously,
below.
Like, obviously the income, you still have to pay for that, and you might take an income change. But with people being able to work remotely and still have some of these high-paying gigs, or you hope it opens up some opportunity to small businesses and entrepreneurs who want to go there. If you make a go of it, I mean, you can live perhaps more affordably there than certainly a lot of other places in the country.
100%.
So,
the only other thing I think I would add is that 2-3 years ago, we did not expect this type of growth in Greater Moncton.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that now when you see the numbers, the articles like Money Sense released and the hype, you got to almost assume that growth is there over the next few years. It won't be as tremendous, obviously. We're not going to see, 84% over 3 years.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's still some room there, and that's, I think, is going to turn attention to investors for sure.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We already get a lot of calls about it, so really appreciate you coming on, and we'll check in again soon.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget, like, follow, subscribe, and we're going to link all of Dennis's contact information. You can find it on our social media, so you can reach out as well.
Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.
Broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.